Hello and welcome to JewishTV.media. This is the sixth talk in our series on happiness. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about a Jewish concept called bitachon, which means trust in God. I'm sure many of you have heard of emunah. Emunah means faith in God. A lot of people profess faith in God. Faith in God means I believe that God created the world. I believe that God created me. Many people profess to having love of God. They love God. Bitachon is something different. Bitachon is a conviction that God loves me. To say that bitachon means merely trust in God doesn't really say anything. What do you mean trust in God? I trust in God. Bitachon means more than trust. Bitachon means confidence that God loves me. The confidence that God loves me is in spite of my actions. I may do something which is totally inappropriate, but God still loves me. Why? Because God is my Father. I confess I actually had a problem with this concept. The Lubavitcher Rebbe spoke about bitachon. It's actually a printed talk on a sikha on the Parsha of Shemot, of Exodus, the first Parsha in the book of Exodus. The Rebbe there speaks about bitachon. And the Rebbe says that if a person has bitachon, that he should fear from nothing at all. I had difficulty with this concept of bitachon. I didn't actually understand what it meant. What does it mean that because you have confidence in God's love of you, that nothing bad can happen to you? What does that mean? Won't God punish you if you act badly? At any rate, the Rebbe wrote me back, and the Rebbe said as follows: that bitachon shaykh l'chol echad v'echad miYisrael, that bitachon, trust, confidence in God's love of us, is relevant to every single Jewish person. That Shabbos that the Rebbe wrote to me, he verbrengt, and in his verbrengen he spoke about the concept of bitachon with the same words that he spoke about in his note to me. In his note to me, the Rebbe said these words, that how do we know that God loves us in spite of our misconduct? He says, because the verse says, Kinar Yisrael Voyaveu, that the Jewish people is a young child and God loves him. When I saw this, I didn't understand what it meant. But then we received the talk. I was living in Australia at the time. A few weeks later, we received the talk that the Rebbe had said that very same week. And there the Rebbe said, what does it mean, Kinar Yisrael Vayaveu, that the Jewish people are God's young child and he loves him? And the Rebbe said as follows: the Talmud says that Yesem Imasha Tinik Eichel Mefarer, that more than what a child eats, he scatters. You ever fed a child? You know what this means. You know, you feed the child, and you worked hard to prepare the food, and then half the food is on his face, the other half the food is on the tray, and the rest of the food is on the floor, and a little bit of food goes into his mouth. So the Talmud says that more than a child eats, the child scatters. And yet, have you ever seen a mother or a father not feed a child just because the child wastes 90% of the food? And the same thing also, the Rebbe explains, comes to God. That even though God gives us a tremendous amount of power, huge potential, and we waste 90% of it, we go against God's will most of the time. Nevertheless, Kinar Yisrael, we're like God's little baby, and God loves us. That is the meaning of bitachon, of trust in God. It's trust in God's love of us no matter who we are, what we are. This, of course, is not an excuse to do the wrong thing. We shouldn't do the wrong thing because it's the wrong thing. But even should we do the wrong thing, we should trust that God loves us. And that in spite of everything, God will only do the right thing by us. And in this context, the Rebbe quoted from his predecessor and his namesake, the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek says, Trach good, v'zayin good. Or in Hebrew, Chashov tov, yeh tov, think good, and it'll be good. As long as you maintain your belief that God will do the right thing by you, in spite of yourself, in spite of your circumstances, God will certainly do the right thing by you. So be happy, joyful, until next time.
JewishTV.media